Hey everybody, and welcome back to Split Couch Games. I'm Scott.
And I'm Ben.
And this is Couchcast number 57. We're gonna briefly talk about...
Super intense, apparently.
What?
I said be super intense, apparently.
I mean, I'm kind of tired. Anyway.
Okay.
So we're gonna be bringing in some conversation about EA. It's gonna last at most like 3 minutes because we're kind of tired talking about EA and all their...
Yeah, because the last two podcasts were all about them and how they're royally fucking everything up.
Yeah. Maybe they'll stop. We'll find out in this podcast. And then we're gonna kind of wing it a little bit in the middle, but we're gonna have a pretty cool ending where we talk about our favorite game of the year. Yeah.
Don't expect much from either of us.
We've been busy this year. We've been busy the last 2 years.
Well, the stipulation that you put on the entire conversation topic at that point was that it had to be a game from this year. I've been busy this year playing games like from the last couple of years because I have a huge backlog.
Yeah.
You've been playing Gears of War 4 and PUBG.
Yeah. And one of those came out this year, so I have something to talk about. Anyway, we'll get into that later. So start things off, EA. So I think where we left off was that I got it so long ago. It wasn't even that long ago. They just fuck up everything every day. So where we're at right now is they've turned off microtransactions. They've insinuated that it's because they didn't go for cosmetics because they didn't want to break with canon.
Yeah, even though things like Connect Star Wars or whatever
exists. What? Boba Fett dancing is not canon?
No.
And also, like, previous Battlefront games also had cosmetics and...
well, specifically...
Battlefront 1.
Battlefront 1, the 2015 version, had cosmetic changes.
Yeah, and then...
that were perfectly, like, acceptable within canon.
Yeah, and then also the fact that, like, the heroes are fighting during, like, you have Chewbacca fighting in Theed's Palace or something like that. I don't know. It's just...
Where you have, like, you know, Rey fighting Darth Maul and that kind of shit. Like Kylo Ren versus Obi-Wan. Yeah.
Oops.
My favorite part was that the cosmetics are actually in the game. It's just that you can't access them.
I mean, yeah. Let's just...
Like... Well, I mean, the cosmetic changes that people would have wanted are literally in the game files.
Yeah.
But there's no way to unlock them.
And
they're like, we didn't want to do that because it would ruin the canon. All right, EA.
It's just a whole thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to beat on them too hard. Like, 98% of people agree that it's fucking stupid. Yeah, so we're not gonna we're just not gonna continue on down that road. What we are gonna mention though is EA and UFC 3. Oops. Ben didn't make a point. So here's what happened. They just entered beta and people realized that hey, it has the almost exact same pay to win system as Battlefield 2.
Battlefront 2.
So Ben and I are going to try to give them the benefit of the doubt that it just so happened that like they were too close together.
Yeah, too little, too late. So they could they didn't have time to make any changes. Yeah, because I mean, realistically, this Battlefront 2 fiasco has really only been unfolding for like the last month or so. Yeah, and when you put out a beta build of something, it's usually like several months old. Yeah. So there's I would hope that at some point that they tweet out like, hey, like, you know, we hear your feedback. we didn't have time to cut it or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, that being said, I still think that EA is just positively ridiculous for thinking that a system where you can either pay money or just rely on in-game grinding and RNG to do something as simple as upgrading a basic jab.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't understand how they looked at that and they're like, yeah, this totally is fair and what people expect out of a premium AAA title that they already paid $60 for.
Yeah.
Like, if they were offering it up for free, then yeah, sure. You know, like, fine, whatever. I still think it's a shitty system, but at this point, like, I can at least kind of justify, like, okay, but it's a free game, so you kind of need a little bit of a shitty microtransaction system so that you can make some money off of it.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Yeah.
At least not as far as I know.
So I'm going to come at you with a hot take. I think that EA is getting the short end of the stick because there was going to be someone that pushed microtransactions this far. At some point in the future, someone was going to do it. And it just so happened that it was EA doing it now.
Well, I mean, the mobile market has been doing it for years.
Well, the mobile market is a whole other thing.
The mobile market accounts for damn near half of the profitability of the entire games industry every year.
Well, no, I know that, but
we can't poo-poo it.
Well, we're not poo-pooing it. We're not.
Yeah, I know you're not poo-pooing it. I'm saying, like, as a business, nobody should look at mobile and be like, oh, well, like, they're doing stuff this way, and people are constantly yelling. But I mean, I suppose at the same time, there are, you know, the fact that it accounts for so much of the profitability makes it that much more appealing to do things that way. But I feel like EA kind of missed the point of, like, those games are often free and played by, like, 5-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, I think, but, so all I'm saying is that, like, at some point, you know, AAA publishers that put out a game for $60 are going to start pushing the envelope on what's okay with microtransactions. And I think it's actually a good thing that EA did it now. To this extent, right? Because I feel like the microtransaction system was slowly creeping forward, like trying to get, like, weasel more and more money out of it, and, like, trying not to, like, piss off too many people, right?
Yeah,
I think it was just, like, slowly getting there, and, like, we're sort of, like, slowly just being accustomed to, like, oh, they're in the game, like, we don't like them, but they're in the game, whatever. But now, like, EA just, like, took a giant fucking leap and was like, yeah, we're gonna do this. And now people are pissed. And, like, I think that that's a good thing. That, like, people are like, no, at this point, this is not okay.
Well, I mean, I don't think it should be at this point.
Well, I mean, like,
but yes.
Yeah. I meant, when I say at this point, I meant, like, what, like, the point of the microtransactions that they're doing, not, like, this time. I worded it weird. But yeah,
I think by weird you mean wrong, but sure.
We'll agree to disagree.
Anyways, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Frankly, if you ask me, the fact that EA felt comfortable enough to try it at all is the biggest problem. Because realistically, if EA tries it, then it's created this new precedent for what is bad and unacceptable. Which means now everyone else has a little bit more leeway, because it'll be like, oh, well, these are bad, but they're not EA bad. Whereas before it was like, yeah, you know, this is bad, but realistically it's still not really affecting the gameplay. It's just kind of like it'll let you skip a lot of grinding or something like that. And I don't know, like, that's the part that I'm afraid of the most right now, is that there's just been this new precedent set, and now other companies are going to be able to get away with more than what they would have, you know, even 6 months ago. Yeah. Because it's now not as bad as what EA has done.
Well, I don't think that if EA didn't do what they did, that would solve that problem. It might have gone like a little bit slower. Because I think that I think we were heading in that direction. I mean, like, you had Shadow of War basically saying like you can't do the end game content without grinding for a bunch of time or just paying money. And I think like that was really pushing the envelope, but it was still a successful game. So I think like having EA put that hard cap on what the gaming community will stand for or be okay with is a good thing overall. Because now it's like, okay, we sort of like we have a way of like fighting back now, right? We have like this is our hard point, and then like the developers have to sort of they have to stay away from that. And like the moment that someone comes too close to that, we push back again. And sort of like now we kind of have like this front, like we have pushback. Before it was just kind of we like accepted it, and a couple people bitched and moaned like, oh, we should just have all the content or whatever. We shouldn't have to pay microtransactions. But now we have we almost have like an army that's big enough to fight back.
I guess. Sense.
I don't know. I'm looking at it positively. Like,
well, I mean, the way I'm looking at it is, if you look at financial reports, the vast majority, if not the entirety of profitability in games today is reliant on microtransactions and other such practices. And when it comes to that type of thing, the only reason the whole EA and Battlefront 2 situation got as bad as what it did is because outlets outside of the general gaming media started reporting on it. Like when, you know, MSN and CBS and everything, like when they start doing news stories on this, like, you know, it's a problem. Yeah. Because now the general public is aware, and the general public is like, wait, you know, my kid likes Star Wars. Is he going to be a victim of this? You know, even though they have no idea what the hell is even going on, they're just like, oh no, like money and gambling and Star Wars. Oh God. So that, I think, is what made it a larger issue, was just simply the wider public exposure. But the thing that I feel is kind of like the pivot point of like what's acceptable and what's not is just simply like what we as people are actually willing to buy into. Because I mean, loot boxes and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, we hear all the time from, you know, it's like everybody in like the gaming or not gaming industry, but like, you know, all the gamers out there, you know, it's like they hate loot boxes, they think they're dumb and bad and terrible, but then who the hell is buying them? And I mean, I don't know if this is like you know, like some weird situation where people are like, oh yeah, I really, really hate them, you guys, and then they turn around and go home and like buy 10 loot boxes for Overwatch or something. Well, I mean, like that. I think
like the answer is like I think the vocal minority speaks out against loot boxes. Like I think that like everyone who's posting online is like in the minority, and then I think there's people who are like, oh, I don't like loot boxes, but just don't buy them, which is where I'm at.
But I mean, is it really a vocal minority, or is it more a lot of people like to talk about how they don't like loot boxes, but they buy into them anyways because they feel they have to?
No, I mean, I think that like, because I mean, I you know, like the stat changes all the time, but basically like the microtransactions are there to entice the whales, because you only need, you know, like 5% or 10% of the population to buy microtransactions for most games in order for them to be quote unquote successful microtransactions. So like the people who are online complaining don't have to be those guys that buy them in order for the microtransactions to be successful. Right? Like,
yeah,
there's enough gamers in the world to fit all the boxes. and still have the microtransactions be successful. But you do make a good point that it is because, or that like EA fucked up so bad that like mainstream media got a hold of this, and it wasn't just like articles on Kotaku or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I think like that is, you know, something that is good, because now we, like, again, like it just kind of builds up our side of the, or like the consumer side of the argument.
Yeah.
And like it gives us more tools.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I mean, you know, you guys can keep, you know, experimenting with microtransactions and trying to find new ways to make money, which, you know, as I've said in the past, like I'm okay with developers trying to find ways to make more money, like as long as if it's responsible and ethical and all that.
What? You're talking as if like all these video game companies are businesses that like to treat their employees properly and pay them well and give them benefits.
Nah, that can't be it. But yeah.
Did you actually have something to say, or were you just?
I saw your hand motion, and I have no idea what I was going to say.
Okay. What I was going to say is that, all of this being said, personally, I do feel like the act of loot boxes is inherently predatory in nature, in the sense that there are people out there that feel compelled to buy them. Because, you know, like they're chasing that one thing, and even when they get that one thing, like they're like, okay, well now I really want this other thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And regardless of whether or not you agree with that, I mean, I guess first of all, like if you disagree with that and say that people can't get like addicted to loot boxes or anything, you're wrong.
No, I'm aware.
Well, I'm not saying you. That was more of an informal you to anyone listening.
Yeah.
And I say that you're wrong because there was a guy who posted on Reddit, and then Kotaku wrote an article about this guy, and he had bank statements and all this kind of stuff to back up his claims.
Yeah.
That basically showed that over the last, I think it was like 5 or 6 years of his life, he spent like $14,000 on microtransactions, and he's 19. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's a problem. So in my opinion, like, frankly, I don't have a problem with microtransactions as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to sell me, you know, like costumes and emotes and sprays and all that kind of junk, like that's totally fine. You can do that. But give me the option to buy them outright.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's like maybe I can buy like a skin for $5, or I can buy a loot box for like $2. Yeah. So that, like, if I really want something, I can just go get that thing.
Yeah. So before we go too far, I do, like, I kind of want to defend a little bit, like, the guy that spent $14,000 on loot boxes before people jump in and are like, well, he's just stupid for doing that. And I mean, kind of, like, but like, you can, first of all, you can get addicted to anything that makes you feel good in any way, you can get addicted
to. Anything that gives you any sort of like dopamine burst, which, in case nobody knows what that is, it's chemical in the brain, makes you feel happy, and loot boxes are literally biologically designed to give us a dopamine burst.
Because you open it up and it's like, oh, I got this cool new thing. Let me buy another one. Doop.
That's why there's always, like, you know, that like build up in music and like the explosion of color and all this kind of stuff.
Yep. It just makes you feel good.
Yeah, all of those things are psychologically identified to make your brain release dopamine.
Oh, and also like when there's different rarities, like, oh, it feels really good when you get a legendary, right? Like, you feel fucking fantastic, and you're like, I want to go do that again. Which is part of the reason why you're guaranteed to get one every, you know, like in Hearthstone, you're guaranteed at least one every 40 packs because it makes you feel really good. So it's designed to get to that point, like, and for those like who maybe just never bought a loot box or whatever, probably don't understand how that works. And And that's sort of where I'm at with loot boxes. That I don't buy them because I know that like I'll just be like, oh, it's like it's $2. I can just push the button and just get something. And I'm like, ooh, because I personally I have a very addictive personality. Like I get very into whatever I'm currently doing, and which is why like before I was sort of on the boat with that loot boxes aren't gambling because you're guaranteed to get items within the game. And but then when the that's something that we didn't address is that Belgium hasn't actually officially banned
said
or
anything.
said anything. It was just like this is what they're leaning towards and what they're working towards. But when that guy gave the explanation that like of how it affects the brain and everything like that, at that point I was like, oh yeah, that's where it differs from like a collectible card game or whatever. So I'm on board that like they need to be regulated in some way, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's all messy and everything, and we've spent way too long talking about this.
I mean, to be fair, we kind of stopped talking about EA relatively early.
Sort of.
But
anyways.
I mean, we moved on. I thought it was an interesting topic, so we let it go. It's fine.
It's fine.
Everyone enjoyed it. Everyone who's listening up to this point enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Fact.
Hopefully. A fact. Okay. Anyways. So now that we've covered all of that, we're going to move on to our favorite game that came out this year, which is like me personally. I know you told me not to, but I want to say The Witcher 3 just simply because it's a game that I continue to play. But I play it in like short bursts every now and then. Okay. But since I'm not going to be able to say that, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to say because all the games I've played this year have been older games. So why don't you go first while I think?
Oh man. Yeah. I'm kind of in your boat. All the games that I played were either older or PUBG. I don't think that I've even really like wanted to play anything this year, particularly. Like nothing that came out really sparked my interest. Like Cuphead kind of did. Assassin's Creed Origins almost did until like I realized how RPG it turned into, including like numbers popping up on the screen when you do damage.
Yeah.
And that really kind of turned me off. Yeah, I mean, like they're like, don't get me wrong, like there's a ton of great games, but none of them really spoke to me. And yes, part of that is because I play a lot of Gears of War, but also part of it is like, again, like it goes along with my addictive personality, is that if I start playing a game and I enjoy it, like I have to finish that game.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like I have to be very careful with that because it will consume my life until I finish it, and sometimes after I finish it.
But I mean, I suppose the way I look at that is like, how is that a bad thing? I mean,
because I mean it's not necessarily.
I mean, like I'm looking at it from like my perspective of like I like to play a lot of like RPGs and action games, and like I'm playing through like Doom right now, and then I'm going to be doing like Prey and Dishonored, Death of the Outsider, and Wolfenstein 2. Like all of those games are like in a pile right now, and they're all Bethesda games, conveniently enough. And like in my mind, what you're saying is like, okay, well, I mean, that just means like you're gonna play that game and only that game until it's finished, and I wish I had that problem, because right now it's like I'm in the middle of Doom. I sometimes play Skyrim, like I'll go back to ESO every now and then.
No, I understand what you're saying, but like I mean, the best example of this is what happened to me with Alan Wake. I got it, like, my Xbox 360 Red Ring, so I got a new one, and it came with Alan Wake, and I was like, oh, I might as well play it. Started playing it, I got instantly hooked. For the next 4 days, all I could think about was finishing that game. Like, I would go to class, like, as I was in college at the time, I would go to class and I would be thinking about Alan Wake. I would be, just, all my thoughts would go to that. And, like, all my dreams were Alan Wake related, all the way, for 4 days while I beat the game. And then, even, like, sporadically through it, like, the next couple weeks, Alan Wake thoughts would still pop into my head. And, like, you saw what happened when I finally started watching Game of Thrones. It was, I was caught up in 3 weeks. Like, it, there's a middle ground that would be good to where, like, yeah, you can focus on one game, but it doesn't take over your entire life. And, like, obviously, of course, like, that only happens if it's something that I really enjoy. Like, if, I, like, picked up a game and I was like, whatever. Like, I would play it here and there and whatnot. But there's always that risk, and, like, I would have to be mentally prepared for that risk. In a way.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Not really.
I like... Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I'm just saying it doesn't make any sense because I don't understand what you're saying. I mean, like, the words make sense, but like it doesn't compute in my brain because I'm like, that doesn't, like, I don't get it. How? But whatever, that doesn't matter. Anyways, so your game was PUBG.
Yeah, so my game of the year is PUBG. Small side note.
Game
Daisy
of the year,
just
asterisk.
What?
Asterisk.
Well, no, just funny
it's
side
the only
note.
game that came out this year that I played.
I played something else. Did Hitman come out this year, or did Hitman come out last year?
Dude, Hitman
came out last year.
like 2 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, the Daisy, the game that really started the whole battle royale thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's finally coming out of early access.
Oh,
early next year, which I thought was funny. But yeah. Anyway, so PUBG. I mean, it sold something like 20 million copies, and I don't. Why? What?
That was me saying, like, keep going because I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it perfected the battle royale game as far, like, as of right now. Like, I'm sure that someone's going to come out with something better sometime, but it's just a good, clean experience. There's been some issues with hackers lately, but I haven't experienced them. And just, like, the pacing of the game is really good. There's a bit of downtime in the second circle when, like, after you get through the initial looting and, like, maybe, like, the early fights, then you kind of don't see anyone for a few minutes. It gets a little boring, but for the most part, like, after that, you're super intense. And as the countdown as the lives count down, or the number of players live count down, and, like, the circle gets smaller, and you're just, like, you just start getting, like, this adrenaline rush that really, like, no other game, like, no other competitive game really gives you. And, like, I get an adrenaline rush from playing Gears, obviously, in certain situations, but it's a different kind. And, you can get adrenaline rushes from single player games, but again, it's a different kind. And it's a really unique experience, and I'm excited for Ben to finally get to experience it when it comes out on console at the end, on the 14th, 15th.
I thought you said 19th or something like that.
I will look that up really quick.
All right. Well,
but yeah.
I'm going to quickly go into my favorite game that came out this year that I have also played. Because, like I said, I've spent the majority of my time this year playing older games that came out like, last year, maybe even longer. I mean, like I said, I'm currently playing through Doom, which has been a game that I've owned for quite a while, but haven't actually sat down and played. But I'm playing through that. I'm still playing Skyrim and ESO and everything, which none of those really count. I technically played a demo for Prey, because I think that came out this year, right?
That did, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I played a demo for Prey, but that doesn't really count. That game is also sitting there waiting to be played, along with, like I said, Wolfenstein 2, Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. The only games that actually came out this year that I have played, I think, would be... Was Mass Effect Andromeda? Yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda was this year, wasn't it? Or was that last year?
No, it was definitely this year.
Okay.
March.
But yeah, so I played that, and I enjoyed that more than most other people, I think, but definitely not what I'm gonna pick. And then I've played Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. And normally, I would sit here and talk about how I'm a huge Zelda fan and Breath of the Wild is like instantly gonna win. But I don't know, there's something about Breath of the Wild that I just don't particularly resonate with, in comparison to the older Zelda games and everything. And I think it's the fact that it lacks any sort of linearity, and it doesn't have like these, massive complicated dungeons. And personally, I feel like the move to open world with, like the 100+ little mini dungeons and that kind of thing was a mistake for the Zelda franchise. Not that I'm saying Breath of the Wild is a bad game, it's just a different game.
Yeah.
It's not a Zelda game that I'm super fond of. So considering I've been having a blast with Mario Odyssey, I'm gonna have to say that Mario Odyssey takes it for me.
Yeah. And it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I was wrong on the PUBG. It's on the 12th.
Oh, the 12th.
So
okay.
10 days from this recording.
Well, 10 days from when we're recording it, yes.
Yeah. That's what I said.
But you have to remember, people listening.
I know, but I said
listening
this recording
in the future.
On purpose.
Well, that doesn't matter. Anyways.
Matters to me. Anyway, yeah, I feel you on the... Like Breath of the Wild looked so different than any other. It's like it looked like a good game, but it definitely looked different, and I could definitely understand what you're saying when it didn't give you what you wanted.
And you say that as a person that has literally never played a Zelda game in his life.
That's not true. That's not true at all.
Okay. As a person who hasn't substantially played and or beaten a single Zelda game in his life.
Yes. Very, very much accurate statement. I mean, like, I'm on the outside looking in. Like, it looks way different. So, yeah. Anyway, Mario Odyssey for you. I was busy looking that up because they did not just like give me the release date when you look up release date.
Oh, good.
So it took me like all that explanation. Did you explain why you liked Mario Odyssey so much?
Not really, but I mean, it's an explanation that I'm sure people have heard a lot of already, which is simply that I mean, first of all, it's the first like 3D open world Mario since I think Galaxy 2. And I never played Sunshine or Galaxy 1 or Galaxy 2, which I've heard that like they've been great games, but I never owned a GameCube, and the Wii was always like kind of a loose secondary console in my house growing up. It pretty much ever since the Xbox franchise started, like that's the console that I've, you know, kind of been with and stayed with.
Yeah, boy.
And I would like go back to a Nintendo console every now and then to play Zelda games, and that's it. The Mario games never super appealed to me, but, you know, I had very, very fond memories of Mario 64, and even playing the 3DS version of that game, you know, has always been just extremely enjoyable. And this definitely brought all those feelings back, but with so many improvements that it was kind of mind-blowing.
Nice.
Because, I mean, like, in Mario 64, it would be like, you know, you go in, and then, like, you go and you get a star, and then it kicks you out of the level. And in Mario Odyssey, it's, like, literally, like, you go in, and you collect your moon pieces, and, like, you just keep going. Like, it never, at any point, kicks you out or anything. And that was, like, the biggest improvement and everything. But Nintendo as a whole has a tendency to kind of pick a mechanic, and then design the game and the narrative around that mechanic.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, they obviously picked, like, you know, Cappy, which is his hat, as that mechanic, and it worked out extremely well.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, let us know your guys' favorite game of the year in the comments down below. Let's try to keep the comments hate-free this time. There's been a lot of negativity towards EA lately. Viper.
Yeah.
No.
But because Scott's a dick, make sure that your video game is actually from this year. So you can't be like, my video game of the year is like Ocarina of Time or something. No, you're not allowed to do that.
So
Scott says no, and he likes to take away happiness.
Also, well, actually, the way that conversation went was, can I say The Witcher 3, Scott? Because I still play it, and I love that game. And I say, sure, if I can say Gears of War 4. And Ben says, no, you can't. So, yeah, fuck you, Ben.
That's not how the conversation went. It's close, but that's not how it went.
That's pretty much how it went.
No, because you said no to me, and then I said why, and you said, well, if you can say that, then I can say Gears 4, and I said, well, that's not fair, because Gears 4 isn't a good game.
Shots fired. Pew, pew, pew. All right.
Anyways.
We'll see you guys next time on Split Couch Games.
Bye.